Hey guys, my name's Avi, and I'm going to be chatting about nutrition today. I've been a nutritionist and nutrition coach for about 10 years, and I hope all this can help y'all out. So nutrition is a pretty tricky subject because there's a whole lot of misinformation out there. A lot of the information is either outdated, so think like the food pyramid from the 90s, or it's put out there by companies looking to profit off of well-meaning people. So I'm talking about like the fancy diet fads, food companies, like the big food companies, and unfortunately, our very own government. Problem is that there isn't much profit to be made from just selling vegetables, meat, and fruit. There also isn't much profit to be made by just telling people to eat vegetables, meat, and fruit. That's why I'm not loaded. And yet, an incredible amount of time and money is put into marketing these fancy diets and products in order to convince us that there's some magic to them. Fact is, though, it's actually pretty difficult to gain weight when we're eating only real non-processed foods. So what I want to do here is work from the bottom up, the really simple stuff, all the way to precision dieting. So first, let's talk about what might be obviously the unhealthy foods. So we're talking sodas, pasta, bread, pastry, cakes, pizza, fried food, candy, fast food, alcohol, things like that. As y'all probably know, all of these are really easy to eat a lot of, and they also significantly damage our health. Now, if you're like me, we all grew up eating this stuff without really having a second thought about it. And we therefore ended up developing some pretty bad habits of eating them regularly. Honestly, I can't emphasize how difficult it is to kick these habits. From experience, it is absolutely comparable to quitting any other addictive substance. Only difference is that these foods are really socially acceptable, making it even more difficult to kick or, effectively say no to in a social situation. So I think it's unreasonable to completely abstain from eating these foods. We got to live our lives. Your kid has a birthday, have a piece of birthday cake. It's not that big of a deal. But it is wise to greatly limit our intake of these things. So the way I usually recommend people work toward a healthy amount of this stuff is to be really specific and be really intentional about when they eat these foods. So I'll have them work towards a goal of a certain amount per week and only on specific days. So I'll give you an example. Let's say we're used to having dessert after dinner every single night. So 7 days a week, 7 desserts. But we want to work it down to only 2 days a week. In week 1, first we'll say no dessert on Tuesday, so we'll only take out 1 day, still having 6 desserts. And then each week we'll remove a day of dessert until we're down to our desired amount. And on the specific days we'll say Wednesday and Saturday. So this not only removes a total of 260 servings of crap from our diet every year, it also removes the burden of choice. And now this is one of the hardest things about staying off these foods is having to use willpower. Now you might say like, oh, willpower is a great thing to have, and you're not wrong, but we want to try to set ourselves up to not have to use willpower. So let's say I'm trying to eat better, and someone offers me a donut on Monday morning. My brain's gonna start spinning. I'm gonna start talking to myself, saying, it's just one donut, and I was pretty good this weekend, and if I eat this now, then I just won't have anything for the rest of the week. We have room to start bargaining with ourselves, and that puts us in a really uncomfortable, crappy position. However, if I know that I only eat desserts on Wednesdays and Saturdays, decision's already made for me. The answer is no. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to question my decision. It's nice and easy, relatively speaking anyway. So next, let's talk about unhealthy foods that are marketed to be healthy. And as a coach, This is one of the most frustrating things to see where, clients are trying really hard, genuinely trying hard to be healthier, but aren't seeing results because they fall victim to these brilliant false advertisements. So I'm talking about things like granola bars, wraps, fruit juices, natural sweeteners, low carb, low fat foods, things like that. All of these things are marketed to us as healthy alternatives when in reality they're just as bad, if not worse, for us. So I'll give you a couple examples that we can try to avoid. My favorite example is the wrap versus the sandwich. Now, somehow, I don't know how, but we've all been sold on the idea that a wrap is healthier than a sandwich. And usually it's because we're trying to avoid the carbohydrates in the bread. Now, it's a valid thing to go after, but if we actually compare the carb content of those 2 pieces of sliced bread and a 12-inch wrap, we find that the wrap has literally twice the amount of carbohydrates as the bread. Another super common example is fruit juices. We tend to think, fruit, wonderfully healthy. If it's just juice, no problem. Problem is, however, a normal glass of orange juice, doesn't matter if it's fresh, squeezed, unsweetened, free range, organic or not, will have twice the amount of carbs that most people should be having in their entire meal. So if we put these things together, we do the healthy thing and get the wrap and a nice glass of orange juice, we're looking at 90 plus grams of carbohydrates in that meal when we probably only needed 30. We do that 3 times a day. It's no wonder that athlete is having a hard time keeping off the weight. So if we're able to identify these things and we're able to decrease our intake, it's an incredible feat. Once we're able to do this, it'll be easier to think about the foods that we should be eating. So if we were to create a perfect meal, it would look like this. We would cover our entire plate with vegetables, and when I say cover, I mean cover the entire plate. Then add your a fist-size portion of starch, vegetable, or fruit, and then a palm-sized portion of lean protein. For the vegetables, we're talking about spinach, broccoli, green peppers, green beans, cabbage, peas, Brussels sprouts, kale if you can stomach it. All of these veggies are going to give us a ton of nutrients, and they're also going to make us feel nice and full because we're eating a whole lot of them. For the starch or fruit, we're looking at really any kind of fruit, but we're also looking at potatoes, sweet potatoes, things like that. Only thing to really watch out for here are things like added sugar. A lot of canned or jarred fruit is often going to have added sugar, which we want to try to avoid. And Thanksgiving, you got the sweet potatoes with marshmallows on top, things like that. Plain sweet potatoes are sweet enough. Other than that, go for it. Last, we got our lean protein. So when I say lean, I'm talking about the meat's fat content. So we're looking at chicken, steak, pork, fish, but things like bacon, salami, and other processed fatty meats don't fit in here, unfortunately. So if we start eating these square meals, and again, we're talking like nice full plates of food, it's going to help us stay full between meals so we can avoid snacking on unhealthy things as well. All of that minimizes the amount of crap we're putting on our bodies and also has us fueling our bodies with the right stuff. And for the vast majority of us, this is plenty. This is enough to lose weight and maintain a fantastic level of health. But if we want to do a little bit more, when and only when all of that becomes relatively normal and easy for us to maintain, then we can start to dial things in to be a little bit more specific. If we were to do that, we would delve into specific amounts of the 3 macronutrients. The macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Now, like we discussed before, we're getting our carbs from fruit and starchy vegetables. Protein's coming from lean meat, and fat's going to be coming from the meat that we're eating, and also things like nuts, nut butter, and avocados, things like that. The way we're going to figure out the right amounts for ourselves is by taking percentages based on our body weight. So the following percentages would work for a male person who works out about 5 hours a week and has an average body fat percentage. When I say average, I mean you don't have like 50 pounds to lose, but you're also not already totally ripped. So that person is going to look to be eating about 110% of their body weight in grams of carbohydrates per day, 80% of their body weight in grams of protein, and 35% of their body weight in grams of fat. So break that down in real numbers. So for a 200-pound dude, that's going to end up being 220 grams of carbs, 160 grams of protein, and 70 grams of fat per day. Now, if you've ever dieted before, which we probably all have, probably remember feeling wicked hungry all the time. Now, this is often because the diet tells you that you can eat whatever you want. And yeah, if you're eating junk food on that diet, you're probably not going to be allowed to eat that much of it. So if we're eating this tiny volume of food, yeah, we're going to be hungry. However, if you're eating these real foods, and again, like we're filling this plate up every single meal, that's not going to be the case. You're absolutely going to be full. So let's take a look at what that looks like in terms of real food. So again, this 200-pound guy is going to be eating 220 grams of carbs. That's 8 bananas. Again, it doesn't need to be just bananas, but it's the equivalent of 8 bananas. 160 grams of protein is a little more than 5 full chicken breasts, and 70 grams of fat is the equivalent of 9 tablespoons of peanut butter. It's a lot of food, and quite frankly, I'm only 5'7". I'm actually pretty thankful that I'm not a huge dude, so I don't have to eat that much every day. But if you're already super ripped and or work out more than 5 hours a week, you can play around with increasing the amount of carbs you eat. On the flip, if you don't exercise at all, we can scooch those numbers down a bit so that we're not fueling body fat and we're just fueling your activity level. Last, and only if you're able to hit your daily macros regularly and relatively easily, you can start messing around with nutrient timing. Nutrient timing is when we optimize the input of specific nutrients based on when you're exercising. So generally speaking, you want to consume the majority of your carbohydrates surrounding your workout, so before and after. You also want to save your consumption of most of the fat in the day for after the workout. But protein can generally be spread evenly throughout the day. In addition to this, if you're not looking to lose body fat and you're looking to really put on some muscle, we're going to want to have a protein-rich meal about an hour before bed. This is going to allow your body to repair itself as you sleep. Now, no matter where you find yourself in these steps, whatever you're working towards, a huge obstacle for all of us in this is cost and time. The easier and cheaper we can make this happen for ourselves, the better. For your veggies, cabbage is absolutely my favorite. It's super nutritious, wicked cheap, and keeps for a really long time in the fridge. Also, spinach, green beans, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, all great looks, and you can find them frozen, fresh, whatever works for you. For carbs, my favorites are bananas, oranges, and sweet potatoes, all wicked cheap and easy to prepare. Also, bananas, oranges, really easy to take on the go if you need. For protein, my favorite is boneless, skinless chicken thighs. They are usually cheaper and more delicious and easier to cook than chicken breasts. So that's why I go with those guys. Lastly, for the fats, you gotta love peanut butter, and if you don't for some crazy reason, any other nut will do, along with things like avocados. As far as making it easier on yourself to eat like this, preparing a bunch of food at once is a great way to minimize the barrier that we find when we need a meal and we don't have a lot of energy. So, think about it. You come home from work, you're feeling hungry, tired, and all you got is raw chicken in the fridge. Screw it. I'm probably not going to take the effort to cook it, and I'm probably going to go out and find something unhealthy to eat. But If I already have cooked chicken, cooked sweet potatoes, and green beans ready to go, I've got a proper meal in 10 minutes with basically zero effort. So that's my spiel. Hope it was informative, and I'm happy to correspond if you have any specific questions for me. Y'all take care.